Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Behind the Emerald Veil podcast with Mandy and Allison from Soulstar Energy Collective. We're intuitives, healers, and teachers who are really passionate about sharing all things energy, intuition, healing, etc., etc.
Witchy, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's what we'd love to do. And that's what we're here to do.
Yay.
Yeah. So this week we're going to chat about our children,
Yeah.
essentially.
Children. Yep.
Yeah.
And how we can support our children. And even just having like an understanding of, um, children moving through this type of ascension or energy, and how we can like support and all of that.
Yeah. And this, I guess, doesn't have to mean your children, but all children. So whether you're a grandparent, whether you're an auntie or an uncle, or you're a parent, or even like a teacher who, who's in the school system. So we just felt like it was, especially with all the energy that's coming onto the planet right now, it's really affecting our children. And we haven't really done a full episode committed to chatting about how to support our kids, as they shift and change, and especially the ones that are super sensitive, and like how that might show up in their life and how we can support them. So
absolutely.
Let's get to it.
Let's do it. Since I'm half kid, this is kind of a perfect thing.
This will be a
Since
fun
I
one.
like alphagetti still. Andy likes to make fun of me for.
Let's just share. You're like, well, guess what I had for lunch today? And I'm like, I don't know, like soup, salad, I don't know, lunch stuff. And you're like, alphagetti. I was like, what? I haven't had alphagetti since I was like a child. I don't even know that they made it still.
And then you're like, did you have it with toast and butter? And I was like, of course. You dipped it in.
Did you have it on toast? Did you have it on toast?
I like put a spoonful on the toasted butter. And so I was like, what?
Is it even good?
Oh, it's so good.
But it's just kind of bland. I remember it being very tasteless, like bland.
No.
Do you put salt in it?
No.
Oh.
I'm a pretty plain eater. But I love it. It's so good. And I only get the alphagetti one. Like, I don't want no princess shape. I don't want
you just want the alphabet?
Yes, because I like the little noodles. Like, I like the little, like, they're so little noodles. When you mix it up and you add in, frozen or whatever, and it's like these bigger noodles, that's not what I want. I want the little noodles.
Oh my Lord. That's amazing.
So I hope that other adults eat alphagetti still, because I was surprised.
Come let us know.
That reaction.
You were.
And so I was like, oh shit. Maybe other people don't eat alphagetti.
Okay, wait. Things from my childhood that I don't eat anymore would be alphagetti, Kraft dinner.
You know, make Kraft dinner for your kids?
I make the Annie's crafted, like mac and cheese, but not like the toxic cheesy Kraft dinner. I can't do that one.
As I have jumbo boxes in my cupboard.
I no longer eat Hamburger Helper.
I don't really like Hamburger Helper. I was never, no.
What else was that? Oh, my mom used to do chicken soup on toast. That was like
soup on toast.
So that's just as gross as alphagetti on toast, I'm gonna say. But it was good. Like when I was a kid, it was tasty.
Do you know what my mom used to do? I just remember. I love that we have these little micro chats before. This is great. I think we should stick with this. Just like off topic, getting to know ourselves.
Getting to know ourselves.
I was talking to my mom the other day because I had brought plain potato chips to my son's soccer game.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I love that. And she was like, you shouldn't open that beside me. And so she starts eating them. And I'm like, do you remember when I'm like, you used to put plain potato chips in a Ziploc bag and pour vinegar in it and salt?
What? To make salt and vinegar chips? Yeah. Ew. Wait, you know what would have worked better is that she put it in like a spray bottle and sprayed vinegar on it.
That totally would have worked better. Or just fork it up and buy salt and vinegar chips.
That's so funny.
And my my mom's, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I do remember that." And she was like, "That was so good, huh?" And I was like, "Well, they were kind of soggy."
Wait, we used to put potato chips on our hot dogs.
See, I never did that, but you
Yeah.
just okay. So Mandy just gave me this whole new idea. I was having I made us tuna
Tuna.
sandwiches on pita bread,
Yeah.
and then I'd had the Lay's potato chips, and then she was like, "Put the Lay's potato chips in the pita," and oh my gosh,
Game
it
changer.
was really good.
It gives a bit of, it changes the texture and it's some crunch. It's so good.
Oh, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
Now I just need to know if we can actually stay friends or not. Um,
Why?
so just want to know if this is something you would eat or not.
Okay.
So I love French fries, dipping them in mayo and then gravy.
I would eat that.
It's so
I've never
good.
done the
Okay.
I've never done the mayo and the gravy, but I've tried it because it's just like
Ooh.
McChicken sauce, the mayo, right?
Yeah, so you just like, yeah,
Yeah.
take your fry, dip it in mayo, then dip it in gravy, and then eat it, and
Okay.
it's so
So
delicious.
good.
Okay, we can stay friends. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay, let's move forward. Okay, let's talk about our like children and okay. I don't even know how to start the conversation. I
Let's
don't
just
even
talk about kids.
well, I think that we wanted to chat about this because a lot of kids are going through it right now because of what's going
Mhm.
on in the energies. And when we say what's going on in the energies, what we truly mean is all of the solar activity that's happening on our planet right now. So if you don't follow that, you can by following the Schumann resonance. So there's an app you can follow, the Schumann resonance, and then also what is that
What is
this
that one
solar flare
called?
one?
Yeah, because it's is it space weather? Space
Yeah,
weather.
space weather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one will give you updates when we're getting, it will talk about like moderate solar flare, so like Mandy and I, because like I don't know how to read some of these things, but I
I
know that
certainly
a
don't.
moderate solar flare or, an R1 blackout, like I can kind of understand if I'm getting alert after alert after alert, we've got some major solar activity happening. And I'm
Yeah.
like, buckle up.
Yes.
Here we go.
And usually we notice like so we'll get those notifications usually like right after we've gone through like oh my god I'm so tired right now or a
Yes.
headache has just come on and you're like I don't know why I have a headache or your stomach is upset and you're like oh I just my stomach is just not like it's turning or whatever and then we'll start getting
Yep.
all of these notifications that so you have to imagine if this is affecting us as highly sensitives, like obviously this is affecting our children as well.
Oh, and that's the thing. Like I always feel so bad um for the kids because we all know like even if we take everything away, kids, that veil, their
Mm-hmm.
ability to see the other side or connect to the other side is so much easier. And I
Yeah.
think anybody can see that through whether their childhood, through other kids and stuff, that veil is so much thinner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think it's really like I have a lot of empathy for children, especially if they're coming in and they're more sensitive. That their little bodies, like their minds aren't fully formed, they don't understand, like at
Yeah.
least you and I can be like, oh, that's what's happening, and like that gives me a sense of relief. Like
Yeah.
if I'm having shitty sleeps and I'm dreaming like crazy or I'm getting up, or because sometimes I will forget and I'll be like, what is going on, and then I'll like it's somebody will post something and be like, oh my god, buckle up, is going
Mm-hmm.
crazy, and I'm like, oh, it gives me relief, it makes me
Mm-hmm.
feel better that there's a reason
Mm-hmm.
particularly for it. And then you and I will reach out, hey, are you feeling a little off, because I'm feeling
Yeah.
real shitty,
Yeah.
and it gives you relief. But children, they don't know necessarily how to communicate this,
Yeah.
right?
Or that anything's wrong in particular. Like for both of my children, this even just in this past week, both of them have been struggling
Yeah.
with just being okay. Like they both just feel down and they're just like, I'm not sure like what is happening. I just don't feel like myself. And
Yeah.
thankfully, they've both been able to articulate that to me separately,
Mhm.
individually. And I've been able to chat with them and kind of get to the root, if there's a root to it. And then also doing some energy work with them, like with Aubrey specifically, because she's much more open to it than Jace is. We
Mhm.
went in and did some energy work. Like I just guided her through meditation and she did all of it so she could learn how to do it all. For Jace, it's more of a, we just have to like, for him, he has to get it, like the way that he's, I guess, processing it is by talking about it,
Good.
and sleeping, and just trying to move through it. Like I'm just very clear with him specifically that he needs to get it out so he doesn't hold on to it.
Well, and I think, being a teenage boy,
Mm-hmm.
they have a tendency
Mm-hmm.
to hold on to things and kind of keep it in. So that's
Yeah.
amazing that he's talking about it. So yeah, he may not be as open to do the things that Aubrey is being open to do. Again, that could be a guy thing, that could be the teenage thing, whatever. But the fact that he's willing to talk about it, that's huge
I know.
because like that's something I have tried to make sure that my boys feel comfortable to talk to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I definitely know that Carter, he's always been one to hold things in.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, that is something like, and that's just his nature.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if he was, he's 13 now, but as an 8-year-old, as a 6-year-old, he was definitely not somebody to like. I found like we can have conversations through text and he'll be
Right.
more open than
Right.
sitting and talking with me. So,
Yeah.
you find your way of communicating,
Yeah.
but it's like so important to get it out. And that's not even just like we just know that on a healing aspect
Mm-hmm.
as we go through this journey. Like if there's something bothering us and we stuff it down, it's going to create a block. It's going to come out some other way, all of those things. So, right there, it's like so important that we can get our children
Mm-hmm.
talking and feeling
Mm-hmm.
open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that also, being able to support our kids to ensure that they aren't holding on to things that they're going to have to heal in the future. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of us who are awakening or who are going through an awakening experience or who have awakened and are having these conscious conversations, like a lot of us are trying to support our children to ensure that they don't have to do the healing that we've had to do. But with that being said, there is still a responsibility as the parent to do our own healing work so that we're
Yes.
not passing that along to our children.
That is so true and big. And, as much as it's like, well, why would I pass on my wounds to my kids? It's like, it's crazy how these things do happen,
Mm-hmm.
or you see repeated patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And I sit there and I've seen it in different people in my lives, a repeated pattern. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, well, how the hell would this, like, why would this work this way? Like, I don't get it. It's not like the person was like not like an obvious one where like I'm an alcoholic and then
Yeah.
like it's like obviously out there. There's things that patterns that maybe you wouldn't even know, like you're like
Mm-hmm.
my kid doesn't even know that happened to me, like
Mm-hmm.
why would that repeat itself? But
Yeah.
it's an energetic thing,
Yeah.
and that's where I don't understand it fully. I don't know why or how it happens, but it seems to be that's we're finding that with readings and stuff, that there seems to be this pattern sometimes of wounds or trauma or whatever it is in your own childhood that now are playing out in your kids' childhood.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, maybe you can't explain it, but you can't deny it.
Well, right, you can't
Right?
deny it because it's so
Yeah.
glaringly obvious and traumatizing and devastating, but that doesn't
Yeah.
mean that as the adult we still, it's too late. Do you know what I mean? So like for example, if there was something traumatic that happened to me in my childhood that nobody knew about, but now it's playing out in my kids child, like in their life for some reason, and I'm like, what the heck, like why is it happening to them too? It
Hmm.
doesn't mean that it's too late for me to do the healing. Like I can
No.
still do my healing work to ensure that it helps them do their healing work, because now of course, because they've experienced that, they're going to have to do some healing around that. There's no
Hmm.
doubt about that. But
Hmm.
we can, we can do it first so we can understand how to move through it, so we can support the healing on there, and hopefully it ends in that generation, or with them in their life, and it isn't passed on to their children. But I can see, like, basically our whole generation were unhealed children having children. Do you know what I mean? And our parents' generation were unhealed, as an unhealed generation having children, and the one before that and the one before
Oh
that.
yeah, you didn't talk about your things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I remember going to my grandfather's funeral, and my grandmother, it was her husband that passed. And I remember I was crying, and she was like, "Oh, honey, we don't need to do that. No, no, we don't need to." Like it was one of the, and it's like in my head, I'm like, okay. And I'm like trying to like pull it together, but it really shows that, that's something we don't talk about these things. We
Yeah.
don't display these things. So, these past generations where it was really like not accepted, not talked
Mm-hmm.
about, it's just crazy. My
Yeah.
mom had OCD. It was definitely one of those like, we
You
don't
didn't
talk about
even
that.
you didn't
We
even
don't talk
hear
about
about
it.
that until you were older, did you?
No, I didn't even know. I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea my mom had all of these. Like, I had no idea if we moved, she struggled, she would go back. Like, I had no idea until my adult life
Mm-hmm.
that my mom struggled with it the way that she did. It was very secret. But that was because in her childhood, it was very secret. That's not
Mm-hmm.
something we want other people to know. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want the neighbors to know this.
Right.
It's like there's a teenage pregnancy or something. Your kid is, we're shipping you off to
Yeah.
this woman's thing, because again, we don't want, so that's not that far in our history
Mm-hmm.
of how much we turn the eye and don't look at it. So it's really, so it's no wonder that our generation is maybe hasn't healed it in the past, but we do. We can heal it now, and i
Mm-hmm.
and i feel this responsibility of healing it now,
Yeah.
and changing that script of what our parents and grandparents went through, because all we're doing is like we are creating this stage for our children to then carry this on and
Mm-hmm.
it get better
Yeah.
continuously. Our job is to, a job as parents is to raise these little human beings to be these great adults.
Yeah. And how can you do that if you're projecting your wounds onto them and you're suppressing them as a soul being, like a being of love, right? And so
Totally.
that kind of brings us to the point of looking at your children as their own individual soul and
Mm-hmm.
remembering that you're here to help guide them and to help them flourish in this life, and to move them along and into their purpose and into their mission that they had planned for this lifetime. And part of that mission might be to help you heal,
Yeah.
spur some of that healing for yourself, but they have their own individual mission on how they're going to help humanity, and how they what difference they want to make in the world, and what kind of soul evolution they have planned for themselves. And I remember when I kind of started looking at my kids more from that perspective, it was so much easier for me to shift the way that I parented with them,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously before you do what you were taught as a child. So in my early parenting days, I was reactive, and I would place my kids in the box, and I'd be like, nope, you need to go to school and get good grades, and if you ever talk back to an adult, they're your elders. You don't talk back to adults or your coaches or your teachers. Like, you show respect, like all of these things. Like, this is what I was taught. There was a lot of yelling in my household when I was younger, because I had two brothers that fought all the time, so there was
Yeah.
always yelling and frustration, right? And that's kind of the energy that I started out as a parent. And as I started to awaken and learn more about souls and soul contracts and past lives and all that sort of stuff, it was easy for me to release my tunnel vision on
Mm-hmm.
the expectations of my children. And I tell you, the transformation that I experienced in my family itself, like just with my kids and my husband and us as a family unit, was so crazy. It just, like, it released all the tension in the home. And of course, it didn't happen in a second. It happened
Yeah.
over a period of time. The more I learned, the more I understood that, like, Jace and Aubrey are their individual souls. They're part of their purpose is to teach me. What are they teaching me? Part of their purpose is to evolve. How can I support that evolution? And part of their purpose is to heal. How can I support that healing? Right. So, why am I trying to stifle their light by placing them in this box of my preconceived expectations from the programs that I have been subject to my whole life? So, that was very transformational in my parenting journey. That I hope can be helpful for others in their parenting journey, especially for the parents that have children that are maybe highly sensitive or a bit what you would consider to be volatile or troublemakers, button pushers. Like those are just children. I mean, every child is different, of course, but pushing boundaries, maybe they're here to push boundaries so that you can release the reins. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, a big thing to understand is like, we view our children as like not as aware or smart or, all of these things. Like I definitely see the difference now.
Mm-hmm.
But, at the end of the day, their soul could be way more evolved than
Yeah.
yours.
And most
And
likely is.
yeah, and that they are here to teach you,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically being able to understand that in a sense, then it just kind of gives them, again, their own individuality and this like purpose to what they're doing. Like definitely Tanner played a role in my life to teach me to get on, or he was here to teach me to trust
Mm-hmm.
and to get me onto this road of spirituality.
Yeah.
So that was something our souls, you know, contracted beforehand that he was going to come here. And once he did, and if he did, because free will, I could have been like, nope, forget that. And maybe he would have kept trying. But I remember once, but I think I picked it up right away. So,
Well, I think it helped him.
student. And so then like once I got on this path, I remember like his like abilities or seeing spirits and stuff kind of just like went
Yeah.
away. And
Same,
I was like,
same.
what the hell? And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember asking like the psychic Tammy, our trusted psychic over the years, about, because she was the one who told me that Tanner's here to make you trust. And I didn't understand it. But then afterwards I was like, no, he doesn't see it anymore. And she's like, exactly, because he'd accomplished what he
Mm-hmm.
needed to do. Now he can just sit back and be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I'm like, damn. It is so crazy to witness things like that, that you're
Yeah.
like, wow, like, thank you, Tanner. And he's just oblivious to it. Like,
Because he's just so easy for the little ones to just be who they are. Like I remember being young and, just being who I was and happy and bright and, empathic and sensitive and loving to everybody. And then eventually over time, that kind of gets like, you try to, you're yourself and then somebody like is like, why are you doing that? And then you get like a little bit lower or don't do that or go away or I don't want to talk to you right now or whatever it is. And just over time it's like the light just gets snuffed out over time. So we got to try and keep our kids lights bright. But how can we do that if we're constantly telling them no, we're constantly telling them to go away or we're not listening to them because we're distracted on our phone or you know what I mean, like being present with our children and helping them flourish is huge. It's just part of what we are here to do to because they're the ones that are going to change the world.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's something that we're noticing more and more is like, I think we've talked about the different waves of souls coming to help this change, to helping Earth raise a collective frequency. And we have definitely seen these different waves coming in where it's like the generation before us, all of a sudden coming online, our generation, and so on and so forth. And we're finding that these children, so every generation, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's more and more souls are coming forward with this purpose of this shift on earth, to
Mm-hmm.
help support this shift on earth. So with that is like these souls do need to come in, and they are coming in more sensitive. The
Mm-hmm.
veil is very, very a lot thinner. Or is that
The
even proper
human, their
English?
human amnesia isn't as significant as it
Yeah,
was for us, which is why I think, you see those videos or you hear about those babies who are like rolling over in like
I
2 or 3
know. Or
months.
saying like 2 months, they're like, Dad, Dad. And I'm like, what
Yeah,
the?
my niece was talking before she was one, more, I think it's at times more clearly than her brother who's 18 months old. And it's because they are coming in with less human amnesia, so they're remembering
They're
sooner.
remembering how to do these things, which is just like, it just is crazy. Like, it just
Hmm.
blows my mind. And yeah, you see those videos way more often. Now,
Yeah,
somebody could say, oh, well, that's because social media, now we can see it more often. But I don't know. Social
maybe
media has been
true.
around for a while.
Yeah.
And I haven't noticed those things until,
Hmm.
like the last couple of years.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's so amazing to see and
Yeah.
to witness. But what comes with that is it's Earth is dense. Like, it is so dense here. And it is really hard for our souls to exist in this density.
Hmm.
And so I can only imagine a soul coming over that has less amnesia, is more connected to the other side, um, feeling this uncomfortable, itchy sweater, um,
Hmm.
being in this meat suit. Love that. Because they're more connected to that higher frequency, that love
Yeah.
frequency. So it can feel really, really a lot harder to exist in this frequency. And I'm just going to say, I was listening to a Dolores Cannon video that popped up, and she was talking about the grays. So, the alien, the grays,
Extraterrestrials that are
extraterrestrials.
considered as grays. They just look like the typical alien that Hollywood would depict.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And so she was talking about that there is a species, the grays, and they're like taller,
Hmm.
but they've created kind of like a smaller version of themselves. And it's not a robot, but it's like a, bio whatever, right? They created them.
Like
But
an
the
avatar.
reason, yeah, in a sense. And one of the reasons is they find it very hard coming into our
Mm.
atmosphere. It is so dense, it's very uncomfortable. So creating these smaller grays, their purpose is because, we do know that aliens have come and into our place, alien abductions or alien visitation, whatever, whether you believe it or not, I do.
I think
But
I think anybody who's listening to our podcast, I think probably
has,
does.
yeah,
Especially now with all the disclosure that's been going on
totally,
in the
like,
past
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Okay, keep going.
But the whole purpose of it was because they can't handle
Hmm.
that density. And so these smaller beings they come in a smaller ship. And yes, it's hard, but it's not the same for them. Like, they've been created to withhold this density. And I just remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like the fact that it's that dense here, that it's that we are very, like, we have existed in the third dimension
Hmm.
that is very dense and physical. And so, you just think of like this dark cloud or this heaviness that just keeps you all like down and in it. I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, if these like beings that live just outside of it um really have a hard time existing in this density, I'm like,
Hmm.
so what's the difference of our souls
Hmm.
coming? And if we have less of that amnesia, I can only imagine that it feels very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And like, that can show up as, I do feel that can show up as things like autism,
Hmm.
sensory issues,
Hmm.
things
Even
that we like
being
to label.
even being a volatile child, like part
Yeah.
of that could be because they're so just physically uncomfortable and they're feeling that disconnection between their physical body and their soul, like their soul is existing in this higher, maybe disconnected from their body slightly, but also we've come across children who are volatile because of past life stuff that needs to be healed. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things that could be going on energetically at an energetic level for any kids that are struggling And even I'd say like the school system is so hard for for all of the children, which is part of probably why the school system's got to change, like the structure, the system is going to change or has to change or will change, whatever that looks like. I'm excited to see it because I know like as like Aubrey, she's, she gets along well with everybody. She has tons of friends, and she knows very like lots of people in the different grades. It's not like she's struggles socially. She just
Mm-hmm.
struggles energetically being in the school because there's so many children there. And there's, you think about going into a classroom, and even you could equate this to an office or
Yeah.
anything, and you're going in there and everybody's bringing in their own energy and their own density with that because
And
only
if you're
like
not aware of it, you're picking up on, Miss Jane over here, who just had a fight with her husband and is super pissed off. And you're picking up on Joe over here, who's having a panic attack. If you're that open,
mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden all these conflicting energies are hitting you because you are that open, and it's going to come out in whatever way. And that's as an
And
adult. So
yeah.
imagine a child who, again, we know children don't or have a harder time processing or understanding certain feelings, and that's something that we learn as we grow up, how to regulate ourselves, how to understand. My kids are in therapy right now, and just for supporting the divorce and all of that, and one of the things that they were talking about today was like the regulation, like when
Mm-hmm.
you feel anger, like where is this coming from, like where do you feel it, like let's recognize these things. So they have to learn how to do that. So if us as adults get all like, ooh, from all the energies, I couldn't imagine.
Yeah,
Right. And
it's
that can
tough.
come out in either tears, that can come out in anger, that can come out in whatever.
It could even come out as like and show up as like ADHD, like super
Totally.
distracted because you're receiving all of this energy. It's like a system overload, so you don't know where to focus on anything. So, we have
Mm-hmm.
to start looking at our children as little souls, but also like you look at the energy perspective too, because it's so much more than, the surface. There's so much more.
Well, yeah. And, again, now we can just tie this back to the solar activity.
Mm-hmm.
This last 2 weeks, if you follow any accounts, so many have been talking about how much, like, it's been crazy. The
Mm-hmm.
Schumann resonance, which is the Earth's vibration, it's the Earth's heartbeat, has been spiking through the roof higher than it's ever spiked before. So these are tangible things that we are seeing,
Mm-hmm.
literally seeing happening. And so if we know that, this type of activity, if the moon affects people, which a lot of people will say the moon affects them,
Yeah.
solar activity like this is going to affect you. So if that on an energetic level, because you can't see it, is affecting you, then you can't deny that energy,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's energy being put off from somebody else or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, isn't affecting our children.
Yeah.
Of course it is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But the fact that we don't offer, and that is not something that doctors or therapists or anything, like we are missing that piece
Mm-hmm.
in all of these industries.
Yeah. And didn't we were talking to your children's therapist today? Was it
Yeah.
today? And you were saying, like, oh, because she was talking about where do you feel in that body? Like, that's amazing. We should be asking our kids where they feel that in their body, but understanding the chakras, we talked about this so many times before. And you were sharing with her, oh, I usually tie it back to the chakras. And she was so intrigued, was she not?
Yeah, she was like, yeah.
Which is
Like,
amazing.
I know, and I'm like, this is me coming out of my closet. Obviously, I felt safe with her, but I said, oh, I'm like, I love that. I'm like, I very much work with the chakras, and I will see where it lands in all my chakras. So I'm like, if I feel like a gut punch, it's usually my solar plexus, which is I know is connected to my self-worth aspect or whatever. And I remember she just kind of was like, oh. Oh, oh wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah.
So not even in her,
Wheelhouse.
wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And And then then she was even telling me about that she was just taking a course about, some technical thing. And essentially it was things in your past or in your childhood that, are been like stuff behind. So these little moments,
Yeah.
and how they are programming and affecting you in the now. And she found it very eye-opening in this course because she's like, to see certain things that as an adult you look back now and go, that's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I was all upset about that. Like, you can rationalize it now
As an
because
adult.
you've developed your brain and all of these things, and you can see that. And so it's easy right now to be like, oh, that's not a big deal. I don't need to talk about that. But that's not the thing. The thing is that the child in
Mm-hmm.
that moment doesn't see it as not a big deal.
Yeah.
They do see it as a big deal. And obviously it was a big enough deal that it created um, this wound, big or small, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but created this dialogue, this program within you to view things a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she was kind of saying that, I was like, my gosh, I'm like, that's like Mandy and I talk about this all the time.
We do. That's called
All
a
the
soul
time.
retrieval. That's called inner
Yes.
child work. That is like all energy. And yes, because time and space doesn't exist,
No.
your soul can go back to that time, like your consciousness, your conscious awareness, you can send it back to that time, acknowledge it, heal it, send it compassion, release it, whatever you need to do, and that will release it from your current moment because time and
Yeah.
space don't exist.
And connecting to your inner child, that child at that
Mm-hmm.
time. Because I remember hearing about inner childs before I was down this road, and I was like, "Oh God, we talk about what do you mean my inner child standing beside me? I'm my child." I couldn't understand it, but I realize now it's like connecting to yourself. So say something happened at age 8, connecting to yourself, like going into meditation and envisioning yourself at the age of 8 and having a conversation with that version of
Mm-hmm.
yourself. It
Mm-hmm.
is so healing, and it's actually very emotional. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an overly emotional person in the sense like it doesn't like, it takes a bit. And that gets me every time because I'm like talking to a child and I'm
Yeah.
going and saying, "Oh my God," like that. You have compassion for that.
Yeah. And so what we're doing as parents, like tying it back to children or as
Mm-hmm.
teachers or as niece or aunties or uncles or grandparents or whatever, you know, how beautiful would it be if these children of today grew up and didn't have to do any inner child work because they dealt with it in the moment or they went back. Like when my daughter experienced that traumatic like the couple weeks ago, she was walking home from school. I think I shared this, but she was walking home from school and some guy pulled up beside her in a car with another guy. They were probably, I don't know, 19, maybe. And he rolled his window down and he's like, I'm watching you. And she was fucking terrified. Like, terrified because there's, you talk about your children about being aware of strangers, cars pulling in that exact scenario. Like, how did she know
Yeah.
what was going to happen? And then they just kind of parked down the street and she thought maybe they were waiting for her to catch up so they could like abduct her. Like, that's where her, 12-year-old brain went.
Mm-hmm.
So after that experience, and she was all calm, we went back in and did a soul retrieval and a cord cutting and a healing on that moment so that she doesn't have to carry that forward in her heart as a traumatic experience and have to do work around it when she's older.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I think we shared that a few weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago with that and like how that situation and like how important it is to um deal with it in the moment where it's like if you weren't in this space, then it would be something that would have lingered
Yeah. Or
moving onwards.
yeah, and I could have seen it could have gotten bigger in the sense of like I could have been putting more toxic energy into it with my reaction and with my anger and allowing everybody's opinions coming in, calling the police. Like, I didn't end up calling the police, but only because I confronted those two boys because they parked down the road. So I got in the car and I drove to where they were and I confronted them and I dealt with it in the moment. And I definitely got the sense that this was just a joke. There was no like harm,
Mm-hmm.
like there was no intentional like anything. That was just like literally just a joke. But obviously I made it clear that it's not a joke. I did what I did as a parent. Anyway, they might have to do their own healing around that. but,
Yes, 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 yes.
but I could have seen
Um,
how that energy kind of got bigger and bigger, making it more of a rooted experience for her. Because I could have got the cops involved. I could have like talked to everybody about it and had their opinions, and you know what I mean. Like it could have got a lot denser and a lot bigger. But we just kind of dealt with it in the moment, and hopefully we won't need to do it again. But we will if we need to.
yeah, and I think like with lots of situations like that reminds me of like anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Anxiety, panic attacks, it's something that you can feed and you can create a hill into a mountain.
Yeah.
I know I've dealt with that several times, where, had a panic attack somewhere, and it's a crazy how much your mind can make something bigger
Yeah.
than what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know for myself, if I have a panic attack somewhere, if I avoid that place going forward, now it becomes harder and harder and harder to go there or approach it or whatever it is. So the same with any situation, that if you have this situation and then the more time, instead of dealing with it, the more time you have to formulate it in your brain and think about it and think about it, it becomes like this smaller situation to this big, big, big. And then now it's like, something that's even harder to move away from and get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like, yeah, healing things in the moment. Um, one of the things like what I've noticed, and so is like I have, I don't want to talk about, like, I don't want to give away who these people are to me, but 'cause that's not for me to share. But I have some people in my life, that children in my life that I can clearly see now as an intuitive, that they're very, very open
Oh yeah.
to the energies. And I see how it's playing out in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
One has had sensory issues their whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from a child, and there was a lot of crying, there was a lot of frustration, there was a lot of, from the parent being like, I don't know what to do, because this soul was just struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like, we just is like, we need to get a diagnosis. We need to figure out, look, all these things. And now I look back and I've read her, and I'm like, oh my God, her soul is new to this
Mm-hmm.
earth. And so being brand new to this earth, not a brand new soul, but new
Mm-hmm.
to experiencing this life, um, it can be very overwhelming. So in a sense, her systems are firing. They're,
Mm-hmm.
firing out these things. So having a hard time talking, having sensory issues, like, for the longest time, it was like to get her to wear clothes.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard. So getting her to fit into this norm of what this society is, because obviously you can't go out and just walk around naked.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe for where she used to exist, you walked around naked in your form, right? And
Yeah.
so and I like now, and so to me it was like such an aha moment. And even sharing this with her parents um was like, it gave them like this, like, holy shit.
It's like permission to allow her to be who she truly is.
Totally. And empathy and understanding, and not to say that there's not going to still be frustrations,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like when you're able to zoom back and take that higher perspective and look at the whole situation instead of just a child that is AKA being difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to understand that this little girl is struggling, her soul is struggling to be in this body. And so if that means she wants to play in the dirt or play with it, it's because she's trying to ground herself
Mm-hmm.
and anchor herself in. So it just like, it really can open up your mind to understanding it a bit more. So there's empathy there and understanding. Um, and then like I have another somebody in my life that is also very, very open, and she's a teenager and she has gone down
A dark path.
a dark path.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's how she's coping with it.
yeah, she's coping with it down this darker path. And what's really crazy and frustrating is, you know she's so open, her energy is so open, so she's like empathic and just taking on everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So not even understanding it, so taking on anything that's happening in the household, even if there's somebody is in the household that's creating tension or whatever, like taking it all on but not understanding
Mm-hmm.
what this means.
Or that
But
that's happening at all.
yeah, oh absolutely, right? But just all of a sudden just feeling angry for no reason or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is like, with her path going down this darker path, she now her vibration is lower.
Mm-hmm.
And now with her vibration being lower, it does invite in
Mm-hmm.
lower frequency energies. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking demons and
No.
all of those things. I don't believe in that, but I do believe we have very different levels of frequency. And there are souls that are at a lower frequency, and like frequency attracts like frequency. So all of a sudden now you're in this like bleh, dealing with maybe mental illness, whatever it is. And now, because you're so open, these lower frequencies are like, hey, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're like drawn into that. They feed off of lower frequency. And it's just like, it's one of these things that you're like, oh my God, like you have so much you can have so much compassion um, for people like this. And it really has like made me even realize, like, I think it really opened my eyes. And so I would definitely say I was somebody that would judge a
Mm-hmm.
teenager who was, I guess you'd say, on the bad track,
Mm-hmm.
maybe doing drugs, stealing, whatever it is, cursing, all those things. And it would be like, your instinct would be like, oh my God, like their parents didn't do this and this and this. And it really, like, now I'm like, oh, that's really good to have this different perspective now that I'm seeing it happen
Mm-hmm.
from the other side of it, and realizing, like, these children that, yeah, may act like assholes
Mm-hmm.
out in public. There's something much deeper going on there.
Absolutely.
And
But
having empathy, nobody chooses to
mm-mm.
be a drug addict,
Mm-mm.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
There's mental illness, there's trauma,
Mm-hmm.
there's circumstances, but nobody's like, I can't wait to grow up one day and be a drug addict. Like,
Yeah.
can you imagine?
Yeah.
Holy crap. And so it's really, for me, giving me a lot of empathy. Yes, for her it definitely is, she's very sensitive, and I see all of that side, the energy side of it, compacted onto the human side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like one of these things where it's like, how can we help support this person?
Yeah. I think I just want to touch because you touched on the energy, like how when you have a child who's so sensitive and so open that they can be really affected by the energies of like the households. And we talked
Yeah.
about the classroom and all that sort of stuff. Well, as parents or as guardians, it is our responsibility to ensure that we're doing the best job we can to make sure that the vibration of our household is in a higher frequency than a lower frequency, which is so much harder to, or so much easier to say than it is to do. And it takes time, and it takes awareness, and this is part of the healing though. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it is going to take self-reflection. It's going to take a hard look at yourself and at your situation. And some of us probably have already done this work and moved the vibration of our homes into a higher vibration by doing the healing work for ourselves, because as you do your healing work, that will raise the frequency of those around you, and they will start doing the healing work as well. Because as you shift, they will shift. If they choose not to
Mm-hmm.
shift, then you're no longer aligned, and it'll be things might change, which is
Yeah.
just a natural progression of ascension. But for the people who avoid doing the healing work, who are not wanting to take responsibility for their shortcomings or their volatility or that sort of stuff, that is keeping the frequency of that home in a lower vibration, which to these sensitive children, they're absorbing that, and that's keeping them in a lower vibration. So it's almost like a lose-lose
Mm-hmm.
situation, because their parents
Totally.
not doing the healing work, meaning the household is in a lower vibration, meaning they're in a lower vibration. So now they're taking that to school, and they're bringing their classroom into a lower vibration because they're acting out, or they're volatile, or they're jerks, or they're mean, or they're just unresponsive or reactive, whatever it is, however that's showing up for them. They're taking that not only to the classroom, but maybe to where they work or to their friend group. And now their friend group's energy, the collective energy of their friend group is affected. Like it's so
Mm-hmm.
many things. And it all starts with us. It all
It
starts with
truly,
us.
yeah, it really does. And it's like, and it's not to put pressure on anybody. Like you're going to have bad days as a parent.
Oh,
You're going to have those outbursts as a
mm-hmm,
parent where you're
mm-hmm.
like afterwards going, damn it, why did I have to lose my cool like
But
that?
that's where the work it comes in, and you reflect on
Mm-hmm.
that. So that was like a trigger, a reaction. That's how it goes. Triggered, react, triggered, react.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I was triggered. First of all, why was I triggered? And then I reacted. Okay, I feel like shit for reacting that way, but I'm going to give myself compassion for reacting that way, because now at least I'm trying to figure out why I was triggered. So
Yeah.
that's how it works. It's not like one day you're going to be like, I'm not going to react to anything, and you're just all zen all day long. No, this
that
is
just
real
doesn't
life.
that doesn't happen.
That doesn't
And it's
happen.
like, even with Mandy and I, who obviously we can sit here and we understand and we've changed a lot, we still have our days that we're broody or just in a pissy mood or haven't dealt with our own shit or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, or dealing with our shit. And when you're in the middle of dealing with your own shit, it's harder. And so, but I think the biggest thing is like, it really is those triggers.
Mm-hmm.
When you're triggered, when you react, being able to step back and be like, why did I
Mm-hmm.
react? I think that's a big one we miss as humans. And that is something that I find has just been so like a game changer for me, understanding that part of like your trigger, like somebody triggering you doesn't mean that it's their problem.
Mm-hmm.
It triggered you for a reason. So something in you, it triggered. You didn't like it. Why?
Yeah. And usually, like when it comes to our children, it's because they're reflecting something within us that we need to heal. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's something that we don't like. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably something that happened to us in a similar way when we were young that we need to go back and heal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's just so many.
It's
Yeah,
like
so like,
it's a rabbit hole. And when you first get started, it could be really overwhelming, because there could be many things throughout your day that are triggering you, especially
oh
when it comes
yeah.
to our children. But again, like you have to give yourself so much compassion, and also like praise for even starting to become aware of your triggers, because that is the
Mm-hmm.
first step, is becoming aware of your triggers and then trying to figure out why it triggered you. And then like the reacting is going to continue, but then it'll soften as you move
Yeah.
forward. The reactions will soften, and eventually there won't be reactions to certain things that you might have reacted to a couple years ago or a few months ago, right? Like there's so many
Mm-hmm.
things now with Jason and Aubrey where, me 5 years ago would have reacted like Jace
Mm-hmm.
unexcused absence from school. Pardon me, you skipped class. reacted, when I would have been so angry and given him the riot act of why he needs to go to school and all the things, right? But
Yeah.
this, I'm like, oh, I got an unexcused absence. Why weren't you in class? And it was just a simple example, or, oh, I left class because I was done my work and I can show you the work. You know what I mean? Like he had a perfect
Mm-hmm.
explanation that was reasonable for me. And even if he had missed class or skipped class, he's a great student and he's not behind in anything and he's getting good grades. If you want to skip class to go to the gym and you're done all your work and you're not doing anything new today, like that's your call.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think there's balance in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can see there's parenting on the other side where there's
Yeah.
no structure, there's
Yeah.
no boundaries, and that's not good either because,
No,
we as
they
humans,
still
we
need
thrive.
guidance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we thrive off of having some of that. So it's such a balance. It doesn't need to be over
Mm-hmm.
either way. It's like having that, and it's crazy because you bring up the schooling, and I just like, you know, I was never the A student. Not me.
Weird. Weird.
Weird. So maybe that is part of why I have this view about school. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I have found ever since becoming a parent that um I have really not put a lot of emphasis on their grades.
Mm-hmm.
Um it's something that I'm like, whenever I would get a report cards, and I would see Carter is a very friendly student, very polite, and gets
Mm-hmm.
along with everybody. I don't give a shit what the grade things. I will give a shit in the sense like, how can I support you? Is there anything I can help you with?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not gonna sit there and be like, you got this grade. I'm like, because I don't give a shit. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care what your grades are. What I care is that you're a good human being.
Yeah.
And so if you can, at 8 years old, 6 years old, get adults saying that you are polite and that you are friendly and I can sit him with anybody and he gets along, that to me is winning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in that sense, like I already prior to spiritually awakening had this program in me that I was like, what the hell is
Mm-hmm.
this? Like, I don't, I suck at math, always
Mm-hmm.
have. I'm a freaking banker now. And you'd be like, why'd you go into banking when you suck at math? School taught me nothing with that. And I've
Mm-hmm.
used calculators.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's one of these things where I'm like, I feel like I start to realize there's so much being learned in the system that is not
It's
necessarily needed.
garbage.
It is garbage. It's not
Like
needed, you
Jace
know.
is so frustrated right now in like some of his classes because he's like, I don't give a shit. I don't care, mom. He's like, I have a really hard time studying for these tests because I don't care. And I was
No.
like, I know, Jace. And I said, the school system is not set up for you or people in this way. It needs to change. And I was like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, you're stuck in this time where you need to just get through it. So just get through it the best that you can,
Yeah.
and take what you can from it and leave the rest. I said, you're not, he's like,
Absolutely.
I'm not going to need to know anything about like DNA, for example.
Yeah.
He's like, because I have literally no desire to be a doctor or to be a nurse or to do any type of
Yeah.
science.
And
He's
you're
like,
not going to know any of it.
no.
And the fact that this day and age with technology and Google,
Yeah.
so we haven't progressed
No.
over the years.
No,
So
what they're
yes,
teaching. No.
back when we were going to school and we didn't have Google at our fingertips, and we
He
had to go look at a thesaurus. How do you fucking
thesaurus.
say that?
A thesaurus.
Say it again.
Thesaurus.
Thesaurus. Thesaurus. I remember looking at those things, and you had to go to the library and get all these things. Well, okay, like, that's one aspect. Now we have it at our fingertips. And so if we need to know something, we're literally looking it up and instantly getting the answer.
Yeah.
So why are we wasting our time drilling in some of these things that are not important? Why aren't we learning about, freaking budgeting? I'm
Right.
sorry, you can't get away from that as an adult. You
No.
cannot get away from understanding banking, budgeting, all of that stuff. That is integrated. Not one person in society does not need to know that.
Yeah. He's,
And
I
like,
agree.
and I just like, and then I find like, cause I remember like when I was working at I fucking grew up with bankers as parents. I knew nothing about finances,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. How many clients have you seen at a maybe in their early 20s who have, gotten shit credit and they're like, I had no idea. I've
Mm-hmm.
even had some that have been like, what do you mean you have to pay it back? And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, oh, multiple times,
What?
multiple times, but you don't know what you don't
Yeah.
know. And
And
so I'm
you learn the hard way,
you do.
unfortunately.
And I'm sitting there going like, why aren't
I
we
just want to
teaching
say
life
that's because
skills?
that's part of the way that the elites are keeping us
Yes.
suppressed from
Oh,
being able to
100%.
step into our true power and be able to ask questions and be sovereign.
Well,
So,
and to be able to learn life skills like
yeah.
even gardening and providing for yourself, being self-sufficient, all of that stuff. Those are things that would be actually beneficial compared to, you know, geo or whatever, like
Geometry.
geometry. I don't even know. And I was like, who cares? And so it's just, yeah. And I do agree with you in the elites. I was listening to a video the other day talking about the school system and why it was put in
Mm.
place and the is it doctor?
Indoctrination of the workforce because it
Yep.
teaches our children how to get up early to it's just like a
Mhm.
work day, right?
Yeah. And it's like, teach them a whole bunch of nothing. That
Yeah.
was what they said in this thing.
Oh,
Teach them, fill them with a whole bunch of nothing. And
mm,
so it keeps the distraction. It keeps it creates, because they were, oh man, I wish I knew that video, but it was talking about how do we reprogram, how do we get a society to follow our rules?
yeah.
If we do it this way by causing, sometimes like by causing chaos, then people react and they're like, no.
Yeah.
And they're like, if we do it in the subtle way by
Over
making them
time.
over time, by making them go for 8 hours a day, and they totally like laid it all out with the school
It's
system.
so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting to be able to see now where we are in time, to go back in time to see where it was all like where it all started to play out and how long that plan has been in place, right? But now we're at
Yeah.
the point where we're like, oh my God, like I see right through it.
Yeah.
And now we need to undo kind of like what they've been trying to do so we can move forward better as a collective for our higher self. Like they took away our ability to like plant medicine, like healing ourselves from the earth, like all of that knowledge is gone. All of our knowledge about gardening, that's like that ended in my grandparents generation,
Oh
right?
yeah.
All of
Yeah.
the knowledge about like everything that you learn, skill wise, like trades, banking, finances, like all that sort of stuff
All
was
of
never
it.
even like really introduced,
So what does that, and so how is that beneficial? How that is beneficial is now you become self-reliant on the
Mhm.
system,
Yeah, on the systems.
right?
Yeah,
So now,
that provides power and money to the elites. Huh.
absolutely, because if you don't know how to grow your own food, well, now you're relying on somebody else to.
On the
So if we have
grocery
a,
stores,
yeah,
and
if
now
we
we're
have a
paying.
whole, totally,
Yeah,
and if we have a whole society that's relying on other things and that are governed, that are these systems,
yeah,
who has the control there?
yeah,
So that just took a different turn, and that could get me fired up. Woo! But we need to wrap this baby up.
yeah.
So before we do that, we have opened up our doors for our next cohort of the soul activating journey. So this is, we will be starting in January 2024. It's this beautiful 6-month container that takes you through, like you go in going like, I don't know, I feel called to this, but I have no idea if I can do this and I'm scared as fuck. To going through this beautiful transformation of being able to learn and hear how you receive your intuition. It's like this journey back to your soul. It's, this healing journey, this all of these things that we just even talked about in
Yeah.
this episode is
It's one of those
because,
skills that we
yeah,
haven't been taught because it keeps us suppressed.
Yeah. And like that, we've been able to, sorry, I lost my train of thought now.
Sorry. I was trying to
And he
not say
doesn't.
it.
Yeah, so I'm like, so it's like everything that we've talked about in this episode is, from us going on our own journey of learning all of these things. This is how we've gotten to where we are, where we're like, oh my God. So yeah, we love what we do. We love this container. We're just at the end. We're finishing up our last 6 months, and the friendships and the connections that develop between us and our students, but also between the students, is so beautiful. And yeah, if you are at all interested or want to know more, you can reach out. You can see our website at Soul Star Energy Collective. Yeah, and we have like flexible payment plans, all the things. So never feel like I can't do it because of XYZ. Let us know. We can chat. That is it. We're teaching Reiki. We're teaching distance Reiki. With distance Reiki? No, we're teaching Reiki 1 and 2 over Zoom in January as well. So if you are somebody that's wanting to get your Reiki levels 1 and 2, let us know, because we will be teaching that virtually. That's
Good.
it. Yeah.
All right.
All good.
See you next
Awesome.
week.
Bye.